We're good? All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lincolnville Budget Committee meeting. We'll just introduce ourselves for the benefit of the people at home and the people in the audience as well. We'll start on my right.
Dottie Lampier.
Gary Schwall.
Patria Allen.
Ed O'Brien.
And we have two members from the school if they want to introduce themselves.
Paul Russo.
Principal, Diane Halpern, Superintendent.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the public hearing for the school budget. I do not see any public in the room, except I know, Diane, you could be considered as public. So are you here as a public representative or a school superintendent?
School.
Okay. All right. Any comments?
I'm just gonna, and this is the ongoing updates, so you're gonna, and you just flip it over. It's really only the updates at the bottom of the second page that will be of interest to you
Thank you,
folks.
Paul.
And here is the latest update, and I'll keep one. And those for your other members who,
Okay.
I'm sorry, plop them on it, that weren't there. And you want me to,
If you would like, yes, that way the people at home can hear you.
yeah, essentially, so I have one of these copies here. As you know, we've gone over this a few times,
Did you get one?
and
done?
we have had a couple of minor adjustments to to this draft since the last time we met, which was on the 19th of March. April. 9th of April, here it is, on the 9th of April. We also did meet on the 19th of March. Okay, so as you can see, a couple of things have happened. We have had a number of meetings at the school to help us determine what we need. Special education has changed slightly. We have one teacher who was 80%, and it has become clear that we're going to need to have her at 100%. Based on the number of IEPs and the students she'll need to serve. So we've made that adjustment. Health services, we've increased the nursing time. Our nurse has been budgeted for 5 hours per day. We're gonna have to bump that up to 5.5 hours a day, and that is a result of a recent student diagnosis. So we're just gonna need her to be there until the end of the day. And those are really the adjustments that we've made. If you look at the gold pages, the front page, we are at, the increase is, from budget year to budget year is 5.8%, and the impact in terms of percentage change for the town is at about 0%, and that is due largely to the fact that our state funding has changed for this year, and it looks like this is going to be just a one-year thing, but it has changed significantly. So our state funding is up enough so that the $205,000 increase from budget to budget from last year to this year will have minimal, if any, impact in terms of taxes going up.
Any questions from the committee? No? Okay.
We'll be around. Do you want us here next Tuesday too, or is that just you guys taking
That's
the
for
thoughts?
us. I don't think, I'm sure we could reach out if we.
You send me a text, and I'll give you Diane's number.
I was gonna say, what's a good number?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
It
you.
would be helpful, I know Diane is working on one, but it would be helpful for the budget committee to have a draft warrant so they know what where they need to make recommendations, when they want to
I can give it
this.
to you. It's, I see with Paul's recent change, it's gonna be, there's that nursing.
Well, if they can have it-
section.
There's the language we can look at, I'm sure.
Either for tonight or for Tuesday, certainly for next week.
And this is my first time writing these articles, so it'd be really good if you wanna look over and if you see any mistakes, let me know.
Isn't it? Never a mistake.
Never.
Every student gets 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
And it's gonna change.
Paul?
It's a
I don't
start.
know if this was your copy, but there was only one copy of that.
I just thought as the chair, you deserve the paper clip.
Oh, no.
You all done with us?
Yeah.
Something
Meetings
you
every
double
night,
check on,
I
you're
know.
out.
Swap out.
Well,
Thank you.
I wanna stick around for Dave's because he said he's got like 3 hours worth of testimony.
Yes. And a busload of citizens that arrived.
Yeah, you better run.
I'm gonna watch it on TV.
I'm gonna watch the Bruins.
There you go.
Have a good night. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Keep up with
So, yeah. What's left? Mhm. That's good. Right. Which means there's less people. Yeah. Come on. Okay, any questions regarding the school budget? Seeing none, let's move on. Public hearing for the municipal budget. Anybody, any questions from the committee or members of the audience?
it.
David, maybe you could
This is a,
latest and
hot
greatest?
off the press draft
Thank you.
of a portion of the town meeting warrant.
Thank you.
Nice.
Welcome, that has
Thanks, sir.
the blanks. Gotta get over here by the podium. Whoops. That has blanks for budget committee recommendations. The dollars presented under selectmen recommendation haven't changed since the last presentation to you regarding selectmen's recommendation budget. I will say there's at least one additional article that you will see that requires a budget committee recommendation that's not on here. The article hasn't been drafted yet, that's why you don't have it. We are in the process of purchasing a fire truck. We had 2 donations of monies that were presented to the townspeople from either the Lincolnville Volunteer Fire Department, Inc. or the Lincolnville Community Foundation. And those were, Kayla's gonna correct me, but I believe they were, one was 75,000 and the other was 100,000 that were gifted to the town or donated to the town. The way the articles were written, basically said to accept the donation and deposit it in the fire truck reserve fund. And then it went on to say, in order to expend these funds, it will require an additional vote of the town, basically the appropriation of that fund. Well, we're ready to buy a truck and we need those funds appropriated. So the article will say something of the effect of, do you wish to authorize that the money come out of the fire truck reserve fund to buy a fire truck? And please don't recommend no, because the gifter intended it to buy a fire truck and they're ready to buy, so anyhow. But that'll be prettied up and that'll be in addition to these questions or articles you have here. There's also, you'll note that this starts at 6. Article 1 through 5 are election of a moderator, the election of budget committee, selectmen, school committee, the school budget validation question, and some carry forward money. Yes, and whether we want to continue the budget validation for another 3 years. And then there are articles after, whatever the last one is in here, 17, that will be, do you want to appropriate money from snowmobile registrations to give it to the snowmobile club to maintain trails? Do you want to limit the taking of alewives, all the housekeeping articles that don't require a budget committee recommendation will be after all these, so. With that, I'd be happy to try and answer any questions anyone might have, or I'll stop rambling.
I have a question. Anyone on the committee have a question? Just quickly, David, on the revenue side,
Yep.
the anticipated 2018-19 revenue, are those numbers pretty firm, would you say?
18-19 revenue, they
It says
pretty,
anticipated.
uh,
For example, let's look at the excise tax of 450,000.
we're on target for that number or above.
Okay, and then the proposed for 2019-2020,
Yep.
on that same line item, you kept that
The same.
neutral, the same. I get, it went up from last year, now, again, vehicles get older, so it's less excise tax, you're anticipating the same amount of new vehicles coming in, or?
Excise tax can be challenging to predict.
I'm sure.
Car purchases vary with the economy, and how long people have had cars and how their personal economies go. Car prices unfortunately don't seem to be dropping any. So if car prices go up, then excise tax revenue goes up. The philosophy has been, if you're going to make a mistake on revenues, underestimate your revenues and overestimate your expenses, but I'm comfortable at 450.
Okay.
The other thing that you'll note we do here is we do have a fairly substantial amount of money coming out of unassigned fund balance. So if we have excess, if there is such a thing as excess revenue from the current year, it rolls into unassigned fund balance, and we take that out to reduce taxes the following year. So we may lag a little bit, but if revenues drop, then we're still in a safe zone, I think is a fair way to say it.
And then the revenue sharing, you've gone up almost 100,000.
Yeah, revenue sharing, I don't know how many years ago it was. Let me back up in my mind. I think it was 4 years ago, but it might have been 6 years ago. Then Governor LePage put forth a budget that recommended eliminating a revenue sharing, and it was still in discussion, negotiation in Augusta when we finalized this. We actually budgeted 0 1 year for revenue sharing, and then in turn we got some number. I don't remember what it was, $80,000-$90,000. So what we ended up doing that year is we budgeted 0, and then in subsequent years we budgeted what we had actually received in the year prior. So we were lagging a year, and the thought at the time was, if that ever gets implemented at 0, we will have 1 year cushion to make an adjustment to our budgets. It never went to 0, fortunately. We still receive about 40% of what we should receive. Our auditor didn't really like what we were. There was nothing wrong with what we were doing, but they didn't really like what we were doing. So in order to get back to square 0, we've taken what we had received last year and what we're anticipating receiving this year and put it in the budget. The legislature, or the current governor's proposal, is to actually increase revenue sharing slightly. It's supposed to be 5% of sales and income taxes are supposed to be returned to towns. For the last umpteen years, the legislature said, yep, here's the 5%, but oh, by the way, we're gonna take back X number of millions of dollars to balance their own budget. So we've been getting about 40% of what we should.
Okay.
They went down to 2% instead of 5 in essence. And this year, the governor's proposing going to 2.5 and slowly going back up to 5%. But what the governor proposes, the legislature disposes, and they haven't decided what they're doing. There's been actually a bill recently that was heard in committee to retroactively go back to 5%.
Who's gonna pay for it?
Exactly. Everybody, oh yes, let's give 5%, it's great for property tax relief. But if we could actually get back to it at some point, I think we would be very grateful. If we could do it retroactively, I think we'd be very, very grateful, but the practical realities is I don't think it's going to occur. I think probably if we can get the 2.5% the governor is proposing, everybody will see that as a step in the right direction, and then hopefully over time that will continue.
So the proposed 190 and change, is at what percentage are you looking at then?
That 190 would actually be about 4%, but it's really 2 and 2.
Okay.
It's last year's 2 and this year's a little more than 2.
And I
If-
assume you and the selectmen feel confident or comfortable with that number, right?
Yeah, well, I was the one that proposed that number to the selectmen, because roughly half of that we already have.
Mm-hmm.
And if you went and looked in our audit, you see on some note, it says you really should appropriate this for property tax relief. And so we did that, and this year's best guesstimate.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable that we'll get that.
Okay.
Famous last word. I'm comfortable that the legislature we have absolutely no control of
Right.
will do the right thing.
Any other questions for David? Seeing none, thank you very much.
You're welcome, and next Tuesday, I'll bring in a new one of these, but I wanted people to just
Well, we can.
get a look,
idea.
see,
Yeah.
get familiarize yourself, and the new one will have the articles, the last articles.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And next item, any new business from the committee? Seeing no public, there's no comments from the public. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you all. Have a great evening, and the work starts next week. If everyone
I
can
gotta
review
make dinner.
everything.
I got out of making dinner.
Yeah.